Welcome to the Mom Please podcast, the #1 generation-spanning show that discusses all the latest issues in modern society, with your millennial host, Eric Joseph, along with baby boomer representative and co-host, Carol Stram. Join us as we delve into what's going on in the world today and discuss how to bridge the aisle to find common ground. And now, for this week's episode of Mom Please. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Mom Please, the discussion and debate show that spans generations and tries to make some sense of everything that's going on today. I am your host, representing the millennials, Eric Joseph, and I am joined by my lovely co-host, as always, representing the baby boomers, Carol Stram. How are you today, Mom?
Hey, I'm great. And as you all know already, Eric and I are mother and son, and we always like to have these wonderful discussions. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't, but we always keep it very respectful.
Exactly.
And today's topic is, if you can't tell, we're going to talk about gambling.
We are two rambling, gambling people.
Yep.
Maybe, maybe not.
Right.
You guys are here to find out, and we're going to talk about everything that is gambling. Everything is gambling, and if you should bet or not bet.
Correct. Let's face it. Gambling is a risky business.
It is. It
isn't
is.
it?
Yes.
And everything in my life, I'm starting to think about this, is a gamble. When I enter, when I'm driving, when I enter into the intersection and the yellow light is on, that's a gamble.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
When I pick a line at the grocery store, that's a gamble. And by the way, I always pick the wrong line.
I always pick the wrong line. Or on the highway, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I just bought a house before I sold my house.
Ooh, that's risky.
That's a gamble.
That's a risk.
Risky,
that's
right?
a risk.
When you decide to get married, that's a gamble. When you decide to have a kid, that's a gamble.
Okay, whoa. Is literally everything gambling, Mom?
Well, I want people to understand that we're not strictly just talking about, this every day in your life you have to make decisions where it's risky. I mean, the definition of gamble itself is to play for a game for money or property, to bet on an uncertain outcome. That's what I just mentioned. Those are uncertain outcomes.
Yep.
To stake on a contingency.
Okay.
If I do this, will this happen?
Sure.
To wager money, to take on a risk, right? Something that's chancy. Playing the game of chance for stakes. I mean, my grandfather was famously in a poker game and came home and was very excited and told my grandmother that he won a car. The car was a lemon.
Oh, no.
My grandmother tap danced on the guy that gave him the car and insisted that he get back his money.
Okay, and for our younger viewers, what does tap dancing on a person mean?
It means beating him up.
Jeez, yeah.
Not beating him up literally.
But like with your words,
yes,
yeah?
Yes. Thank you for that justification.
Of course.
But gambling, when you hear the word gamble, it's always a negative connotation.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, why is that? Why is gambling always negative? Well, it's really based on society. Like, for instance, in the United States, which is, was a country,
puritanical
country
Christian.
Founded on Christianity. Gambling was one of the seven sins, seven vices.
Right.
It was, envy, gluttony, greed, avarice, excessive or insatiable desire to have wealth or gain.
Yeah.
Lust, pride, sloth, wrath. So the Bible actually never says the word gambling per se, but there are 26 references in the Bible regarding coveting money.
Okay.
And to note, or gambling itself. And to note a few for people who have maybe not read the Bible, Joshua cast lots to divide the promised land to the 12 tribes of Israel.
Oh, wow. See, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, so Joseph's 12 sons, he cast lots. You get this land, you get that land. Some of the land was better than others.
Yeah,
so
some guys got kind of unlucky, I bet.
And
thanks, Dad.
Yeah, Nehemiah cast lots for those who would live within the safety of the walls of Jerusalem.
Oh, wow. That's
worse. Another casting lots. Now, here's probably the most heinous one. The soldiers, when Jesus dies, they gamble to determine who gets his clothes.
Yeah, I do remember that.
You know,
I do remember that.
So,
and if we talk about Jesus, I'm going to take off my hat and glasses if we're talking about Jesus at this point.
Okay. And we were trying to look a little dangerous,
We're
like gamblers,
We're gamblers,
but, we'll resort to our real look now.
All right. So, why do we gamble, Mom? What is it about
you know
gambling?
what?
If it's so against society's morals and against like our structure here, what is it?
Well, you know, and even beyond Christianity, because I was curious about this.
Yeah.
Islam, the Quran prohibits gambling completely. The Quran.
So religion just doesn't like gambling very much.
Judaism, not so hot with it. Hinduism, Buddhism, if you gamble, it interferes with your ability to really develop your spirituality. So, because you're attached to greed.
Sure. Yeah,
right?
That makes sense.
Okay. So essentially, nobody seems to really get so, excited about gambling.
Right. So why?
So why do we gamble, right? Yeah. Okay. So there's a famous professor, Dr. Mark Griffiths, from the professor of behavioral addiction at the International Gaming Research Unit in the psychology department of Nottingham Trent University. Okay, you say all that.
Yeah.
He's published like 620 research projects. So he's really,
so he's a smart guy. He's done a lot of research.
And he's really done his homework on this. So he really knows what he's doing.
Okay.
So anyway, he says there's basically a broad range of motivational factors why any one person gambles.
Okay.
And a lot of it has to do with society's attitudes towards gambling, as well as the availability of gambling.
Sure.
And we'll talk about that, like how that has changed over time.
Okay.
But essentially, he says there's preferences in what's available and people's motivations. For instance, he says older people like to minimize the needs for any kind of complex decision making. So they really like bingo. They like slot machines. They don't want to think it through very hard.
That checks out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now they also suggest there's a gender difference, and please, feminists, these are his words.
Don't
not
jump
mine.
on us.
Don't jump on me. Right? He says that gambling also tends to divide itself along the lines of sex, gender lines.
Yeah.
And he said women like chance-based games.
Okay.
Because they don't want to have anybody see them lose. So they like slots.
Oh, so like private off to the side, chance-based stuff.
Right, or whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
Or maybe doing a pool at work where nobody's watching them gamble.
Yeah,
and
nobody knows.
It's really random, that kind of thing.
Right.
Like football pools are pretty random.
Yeah. March Madness pool, something like that.
Whereas men like to think of themselves as having a level of skill.
Are you saying we don't?
And they'll take a game like poker, which does have some skill, but there's a lot of luck in poker,
of course,
in terms of how the cards are dealt and what. So they if they're on a winning streak, they like everybody to believe that it's because they have massive skill.
Oh yeah, it's because we're good at it.
Like Napoleon Dynamite has, awesome skills. Okay. So it's just interesting. And men are attached to the losing as well. Whereas a woman will, not like to lose. A man will be like, oh my God, I lost $5,000, but I can afford it.
Okay. So this is interesting because I have definitely seen this where I feel like there are tons and tons of examples out there you can find in a lot of places of like people criticizing gamblers who go on these big losing streaks. Or criticizing people who have like really, really expensive products that they're endorsing, where these accusations are met with these quotes like, "What are you like poor? What you brokies can't afford to make that bet. You can't do that." Or like, "You're not a real fan if you can't afford to pay $28 for a bag of cookies." Right.
And that's called the entrance fee.
Yeah.
So in other words, you're supposed to lose before you win.
Right.
And that's part of the psyche of a real gambler.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's variations in lots of motivation. Most of us probably, because I think 1% of the population is affected with a gambling issue. 1% of the United States.
Like an addiction? Or a disorder or something?
Yes. And so some people like to win money. Some people do it for enjoyment. Some people like the excitement. Others want to socialize. Others want to escape their lives and all the negative feelings associated with it, so they gamble, right?
Okay.
Now, what's different about gambling than like other addictions is whereas alcohol and or drugs, you're constantly in it, right? Whereas gambling, you can gamble for a while, you can not gamble for a while,
sure,
and you can gamble for a while.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different. It is very multifaceted.
Well, I think gambling, in a little bit more so than the other ones, because the other ones kind of have like a set price. You go to a liquor store, a bottle of booze doesn't really change price, or a bottle of cheap booze doesn't really change price. But if you're gambling, you could gamble $10, you could gamble $100, you could gamble $1,000.
As I said, it's risky business.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and it's one of the few activities that people get something for nothing.
Yeah.
In some regards, right?
Yeah.
Like the attraction to the lottery. When the lottery is big in Illinois.
Yeah, everybody talks about.
Everybody's like going crazy and like, I have to get a ticket. I have to get a ticket.
The Powerball is $2 billion, $3 billion.
You just think you're gonna, hit pay dirt and be in great shape. For the rest of your life. So every gambling activity has its unique psychology. So it's not just a straightforward, this is who a gambler is. It varies from how they gamble and so forth.
Right.
But some of the reasons that people love to gamble, they are not driven always by the profit.
Okay.
Okay.
I can believe that.
Right. So people are like if you gamble and you gamble well, you're smart. Right?
Yeah.
It's how smart
it's a
you are.
reflection of a character trait of yours.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you're prideful, so you do games that you should avoid. Or, you stay in the game too long because you're too proud to get out of it.
Yeah, yeah.
And you end up losing. So it's prideful.
Okay.
There's a price of entry, like I said, which is, you lose so much money and then the wins come in. That's the price of entry for gambling.
Right.
And then losing yourself totally in it, you like that aspect, but then rationality goes out the door. So in other words, you're unable to really look at it in an effective manner and make a good decision for yourself in terms of should you stay in, should you get out, so forth, so on. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, you have to understand your own motivation. Like for me, instance, I play euchre, right?
Okay.
And you're familiar with euchre.
Sure.
Card game.
Sure,
okay.
I am.
I thought you played.
No,
I thought you
never.
played at summer camp
Mom,
all the time.
euchre is like a game for. I'm not going to be rude. Little old ladies.
No, it is not. Stop that. Stop it right now. Well, anyway, euchre, you have to pick a trump.
Okay.
And the person who picks trump first is control of the table.
Okay.
And I like to control the table.
You like to have control.
So I will. If I make a mistake in euchre, I call the trump too quickly. That's my motivation.
You want to have the control
I like
of the table.
control.
Okay.
I like the control. So, which also makes me...
So that's like an ego satisfaction
well,
sort of
and it
thing
also makes me
almost.
not a great gambler because you don't have much control in gambling.
Sure,
right?
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Okay, so gambling disorders or a gambling addiction is defined by the American Psychiatric Association as the needing to gamble increasingly high amounts of money. So it progresses.
Like a progression
right?
of gambling.
You have repeatedly been unsuccessful in pulling back on your gambling. So you'll try, but you can't accomplish it. When you do quit gambling, you're restless, you're irritable, you're angry.
Yeah.
Right? When you're distressed, that's when you feel like you have to gamble. And you're always thinking about gambling, and you're reliving your past gambling, your losses and so forth.
Yeah.
Like what
so
you
you're
could have,
just consumed.
You're completely consumed. You're chasing your losses. So
yeah.
In other words, you lost money. You're always going back and saying, I have to recoup that money, so I have to chase that loss.
Yeah.
You are okay with risking losing a job.
Well, that's not good.
Or a school, a school environment, or your relationships. So, it's just all consuming. And for those people who cannot live without it, and they have any four of those combination of things, that's considered a significant gambling disorder.
Okay.
And being willing to lose your own money and be reliant on other people to bail you out, big sign that you have a problem.
You have an issue.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So that's the long and short of what it looks like to be in a bad place with gambling.
Okay. Yeah.
But where did this all start? It just didn't start
where did
today.
gambling start?
Why?
I feel like humans have been gambling for all of history.
They have. So I'll give you a little bit of short history of gambling, but it really dates back all the way to the Paleolithic period, which they had dice games, right?
Wow.
So they're playing bunco back in Mesopotamia. And
geez.
So I'm a fossil because I have played bunco.
Nice.
But
wow, that means that's like a 5,000-year-old game.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. And in ancient civilizations, gambling was prevalent in China and Rome and among the Greeks, but it was legislated. It was regulated by laws.
Okay, so they recognize gambling.
Right, but you're also thinking about societies that had kind of this bias against it, that you should really work for your money, not gamble for your money.
Sure.
And then the Middle Ages to the modern era, by that time, gambling evolved into various forms, card games and betting on events, like hangings in the Middle Ages.
Oh, fun.
Or Christians versus lions.
My gosh.
But the rise of casinos actually came in the 1700s.
Okay.
And then the 20th century, we see legalization, regulation, particularly, everywhere in the world, not just in the United States.
Yeah.
And that leads to the establishment of the modern casino and eventually online gambling platforms. And so that's where we're at. And why don't you take us forward into where it's gone from there?
Sure. Well, I just want to take some time to just kind of expand upon the history of gambling in general.
Go ahead.
Because it is something that, like you say, humans have always gambled. Games of chance, random, things like that have always attracted people because I think there is like you say, the idea that you can gain something for nothing. There's not just the financial aspect of gambling. There's also the social aspect of it. There's the aspect of if you're a good gambler, you're seen as somebody who's probably pretty intelligent,
right,
or has some sort of a skill that they've garnered over a period of time. So where does that all come from? A big kind of more commercialized gambling, which is kind of what we're talking about today, didn't really start until the 1600s to 1800s, kind of the colonial era. And it was by and large brought to America by European settlers. So people in Europe are already gambling
already.
They've got casinos already. They're gambling already, and they want to bring it to America. So
when they gamble, Eric, are they doing stuff like they're doing like boxing matches? Right, and they're doing like cockfights and stuff like that.
I'm sure that they used to like have like bear fights and stuff like that. Like they had like fighting animals and things like that. I'm sure that they bet on people fighting. They had, like you say, card games, dice games, all sorts of different things. And then I'm sure that there were also variations of you see those street vendors who do like the cup game with the 3 cups or the folded cards.
That probably did exist.
Those scams, they probably existed
in the
back
marketplaces.
Then too. Yeah, in the marketplaces, right? So that's all brought to the United States. Lotteries were actually incredibly popular around this time period, and they were used even by governments to raise public funds and by institutions. Fun fact, both Harvard and Yale, the very prestigious Ivy League institutions, were partially funded through lotteries.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, now let's not also forget the famous lottery for the Salem witch hunts.
Well, I don't think you want to win that lottery. There's good lotteries and bad
that's
lotteries,
a bad one.
guys. Don't win that one.
That's like Katniss, right?
Mom, please.
Katniss? Right.
We're not trying to win the bad lotteries,
okay.
Mom. Okay. We're winning the good lotteries here. So she volunteered for tribute, I think. In the 19th century, So in the 1800s, there's a big, big expansion in the United States in gambling. So that's when riverboat gambling becomes very, very popular. The Mississippi River is kind of the western edge of the United States at this time, or pretty close to it.
Right.
So all up and down the river are these riverboats that you can do all kinds of gambling on. The California Gold Rush in the mid-1800s saw a rise of unregulated informal gambling establishments all across the West. What type of gambling was there in these establishments? Well, you had all sorts of things like card games, both public and private. You have commercial casinos, so they would do things like oldie-timey slots, roulette. You have charity games. You got bingo. Tribal casinos eventually became a thing, and we'll talk about that a little bit. There was bookmaking, so, betting on events, sports, things like that. Lotteries, as we discussed. Pari-mutuel wagering, which is pool betting, which is like you described, the March Madness pool or the, office pool.
And Eric, what pari-mutuel betting are we doing just personally?
We actually, my sister is having a baby very, very soon, and I'm curious to see, actually, if I can get this podcast episode out before that baby is born. But we're all in the family having a big betting pool on the date that the kid is coming out and how much it's going to weigh. So my bet's the 28th, and I think 8.5 pounds I picked.
Yeah,
pretty sure.
I think that could be pretty close. I don't know.
So I'm pretty good. The last baby pool I was in, I won. I'm not going to toot my own horn. I won.
Who knows?
Then we have advanced deposit wagering as well, which is basically pre-funding a betting account and then using that for wagering when you're at an establishment. So that would be like going to a casino, putting $5,000 in there and saying, like, this is my tab, keep it open, or I'll come back and I will withdraw from that later.
Yeah. And what happens when you go over your tab?
I think the guys come and they break your legs.
Oh, I think you're right.
No, or maybe you work like in the back room as a dishwasher for a while. This is fun. Illinois was actually the very first state to allow this advanced deposit wagering in 1999. So this is actually a relatively recent advancement in gambling.
Illinois was very sticky about gambling for a very long time.
Yeah, but now it seems to be all about it, right?
Although, I have to beat them up a little bit because, this is how you gambled in Illinois.
Yeah.
You couldn't gamble on the soil. So then they took a boat and
river
throw
boat.
it in the water.
Yeah, right.
And you walk the plank to the boat. And so it's not considered on the land. Yeah. I mean, that's just corny.
Yeah. Well, I remember back maybe like 10 or so years ago, me and a couple buddies went to visit a friend of ours in the Quad Cities in Iowa. And I think they're on the Mississippi River, right? And there are riverboat casinos over there. And it is just as you say. It's just a big steam tugboat, kind of back in the old day time. And you just walk out onto the plank. You're on the boat. You could literally probably jump to the shore from the boat.
Correct. They never leave. They never leave.
They don't go anywhere.
Yeah, they never leave the dock.
Right? It is kind of funny. It was a fun time. Now, there is a shift in attitudes around the mid 1800s, around the mid 19th century, and at this time, there was a lot of crime associated with gambling, a lot of corruption associated with gambling. So that changed attitudes. And there were widespread bans of gambling basically all throughout the United States.
Hey, when is this?
19th century crackdown. So basically gambling was going well, but the newly independent United States of America has some different ideas. And this is mostly due to the creation or the formalization of religious groups like Baptists and Methodists.
Right.
So this is coming out of that puritanical
Christianity,
United States Christianity that we are so famous for. And this kind of revival is best characterized by the Second Great Awakening is what it's called.
That's what it's called.
Yeah. And
like the awakening of this is bad for you.
Yeah,
we have
basically
to get rid of it.
There's this big evangelical
and this is before the movement to remove alcohol.
Yeah, this is well before Prohibition. This is well before Prohibition, right? So this spreads across Kentucky, Indiana, Tennessee, basically like the Bible Belt, what is kind of classically considered the Bible Belt in the Midwest. And they all but banned gambling basically in every form.
But you know what happens when you ban gambling?
It just goes underground. It just goes underground. So that didn't stop gambling in the United States. Far from it. Gambling goes underground after the illegalization. So things like roulette, horse racing betting, all things like that. And that creates saloons, which are very, very popular in kind of frontier border states. New Orleans, interestingly enough, was one of the only places where Americans were actually allowed to gamble legally.
Interesting.
Without hiding their activity during the time. And it quickly became the hub for gambling and betting fans of all kinds. Riverboats were viable options still. So that was still kind of a legal gray area that they operated under. And it is something that continues to this day, right? In states like South Carolina, where gambling is still frowned upon. Because it isn't widespread completely across the United States.
There's
each
pockets.
Each state decides its own gambling laws at this point.
Well, obviously, New Jersey.
Right. Yeah.
Obviously,
they've got like Atlantic City. Nevada's got Las Vegas.
Reno.
Right? Illinois has got, and we'll talk about this later, but Illinois has got a lot of betting going on here now as well. In the early 20th century, gambling in most places at this point in time is by now illegal. Basically from 1900 to the 1940s to World War II, there were a lot of illegal gambling operations that flourished, and organized crime was able to move in on that, partially helped due to prohibition, because now you've got gambling is illegal and alcohol is illegal. So these saloons...
What are you supposed to do with your time?
They explode. Yeah, I don't know. Have kids?
Eric, did you know that I dated a real bookie?
No way. Really? No, do you have any stories? Do you have any fun stories? Any mom please moments?
Well, you couldn't go out on the weekends with the guy because, that's when he worked.
Yeah,
that's when he worked.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. You'll have to tell me about that privately sometime.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear that. So prohibition of this just leads to an increase in how widespread it becomes in the underground scene, along with, places that serve alcohol.
Right.
In Nevada in 1931, the state legalized casino gambling because they thought it would be a great way to bring in revenue during the Great Depression, which, probably was a pretty good idea.
Yeah, you know who went out there, though, right?
Who? Elvis? Who are we talking about?
The mafioso.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm sure, yeah.
But that was an attempt for them to have legal businesses.
Yeah, right. At some point, organized crime does this. They always try to move from organized crime into like legal businesses.
I always have to justify the Italian Americans' existence.
Come on. They do good things. They're on, they make good sandwiches, right?
All right, knock it off.
Okay. So Las Vegas does ultimately become the hub in the United States if you want to go gamble, and it's not a place like Atlantic City. Now, in the post-war era, 1945 to the 1980s, state lotteries make a big comeback. You have New Hampshire, which starts the first lottery in 1964, since lotteries kind of went away, and then other states followed. And lotteries were used to do things like fund public education and other public sector services.
Like in Illinois, the big push was for roadways and education and whatnot.
Right.
Does each state legislature have to vote on that? They probably do.
Yes.
Too.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm going to make a mention of that later. There's something that happened to do that. So our own state of Illinois has a long-standing tradition with its own state-run lotteries, and those date all the way back to 1974, like a full 50 years ago. So
is 1974 really 50 years ago?
I'm sorry, Mom. Mom, it's okay.
That's sobering. Okay. I'm sorry, that's sobering.
Listen, when people tell me that the 1990s was 30 years ago, I'm equally shocked.
Okay, go on. I'm sorry.
So then we have 1988, which is an interesting year for some landmark gambling regulation. We have the Indian Gaming Regulation Act, which probably should be called the Native American Gambling Regulatory Act or Gaming Regulatory Act. And it recognizes the rights of Native Americans to operate casinos on tribal land. So then that gives rise to the Indian Casino or the Native American Reservation Casino. And that generally happens in a lot of states that have no commercial gambling. So then the only place to go gambling is to go to like the Native American reservation, to go to the res, right?
after 1980s, we get to the internet era. And this is where you have the rise of
You mean
legalized...
the internet that Al Gore created?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that one.
Just trying to just clarify that for the audience.
Right. So then we have online gambling and legal gambling becoming more of a thing. So commercial casinos expand both beyond Nevada and Atlantic City. These racinos, which are a combination horse racing track or greyhound racing track plus casinos, become very popular.
Now, I think
I'm pretty sure we had greyhound tracks here in Illinois, right?
But I think they've gotten rid of the greyhound tracks.
They did.
In Florida,
yeah,
they got rid of them.
I think in most places,
Right,
dog racing
right.
is not a thing anymore in the United
Right.
States. But horse racing certainly is
Horse
still.
racing is,
Absolutely.
right.
Every year you see
Right.
the Kentucky Derby, the
Right,
Belmont
right,
Stakes,
right.
the Preakness, and all that. Then you have online gambling, which starts as pretty much as soon as the public gets a hold of the internet in 1996. The first online casino launches then. And the market grows fast, but it faces some legal gray area because the internet's a really new thing. And as we know, with the internet, it's hard to regulate. There's
very much so.
The lawmakers are very slow to catch up to the technology that's happening. Then, yeah,
Were
go ahead.
some of the casinos the ones that expanded into online, or did they feel that was cutting into their market? So were they?
That's a very good question.
Well, because one of the things that I've noticed when I've been to Vegas, there's these rooms that are just big spreads of everything you can bet on.
Yeah,
and that is being fed in through the casino.
Yes.
So I'm not sure how they felt about that at that moment in time. I
imagine at that moment in time, it was probably. I would bet that some of the casinos were experimenting with the online business, but I imagine that it was more other outlets and not like, say, your Caesar's Palace or wherever people tend to be doing
We don't know that
their
for sure.
betting.
So
we don't know that for sure. We'll take a look at that. I'll include some sort of a overlay to let you guys know what we found out in our research. So then you have the Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act in 2006, and this is why I imagine it was not necessarily the casinos; it was other guys.
Okay.
Because that restricts financial institutions, so credit card companies, banks, etc., from processing transactions related to online gambling.
Oh.
And who would benefit from that? Establishment retail gambling, right? So that's my imagination, thinking, well, where's the money? Where's the money going? Follow the money, right?
Right.
And that drove a lot of those operators either offshore to other countries or underground and in illegal operations, right? So there used to be websites like PokerStars.net, Full Tilt Poker, and iPoker, and these don't really exist anymore. They don't exist anymore. And it wasn't quite at the same time, but probably sometime around 2011, 2012 is when you see basically all of those online poker websites just completely disappear from the United States of America. And I personally had some experience at the time with those online poker sites because I'd freshly turned 21 in 2010, right? So, and fun fact, so I went to Villanova University. I think I've mentioned that before on this podcast. And there was a guy who went to school with us who was named Dan Kelly. And Dan Kelly is a professional poker player now. Mm-hmm. When we went to school at the time, before he was 21, obviously he was not. But as soon as he turned 21, he started gambling on those online websites. And he was named the 2010 PokerStars.net Player of the Year. He won $1.3 million that year in earnings on online gambling.
Isn't that a fine education he got from Villanova University?
Well, okay, get this. Okay, so I'm in a class with this guy back in the day. And
was he an engineer too?
Yeah, he was an engineer, right? So it's junior year. I'm in one of my engineering courses with him, and the professor decides that we're going to have a pop quiz at the beginning of every class. But he does it in kind of a weird way. You can get up to 5 points on this quiz, but you're limited in how many points you can get based on how confident you are in your answer.
Oh, so you're gambling on yourself.
So you're gambling, right? He sets up kind of a gamble. So basically, if you can choose that you're fully confident, you can choose that you're middle confident, you can choose that you're not confident at all. If you're choosing you're fully confident, you can get the full 5 points.
Right.
But if you get the answer wrong, you get no points.
Right.
If you choose the middle confidence, you can get 4 points, but if you're wrong, you get 1 point. So
Right.
it's like a little, you were only middle confident, so
Right.
we'll give you 1 point, whatever. If you're not confident at all, the max you can get is 3 points for getting it right, but then you only get, but then you get 2 points if you get it wrong.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So there's kind of like, if you're really confident, you study the
Right,
material,
right.
nail it, go for that 5 out of 5. So Dan Kelly comes in one day. He goes to the professor and he says, I cracked the code. And the professor's like, what do you mean you cracked the code? And he's like, okay, so if you are more than 50-50 in your confidence, if
Right.
you are at least half confident in your answer, you never choose the middle option. That is a sucker's play, because mathematically over time, if based on like if you get half of them right and half of them wrong, you end up with more points by choosing full confidence.
Right.
Every single time. So if you're at least 50% confident, you just go full confidence.
So in other words, what's his name?
Dan Kelly.
Dan
Yeah,
Kelly is deciding whether or not he'll, instead of studying, he's deciding I'm going to beat the odds.
Hey, he's studying one thing, and knowing the odds
and I'm
is
hesitant.
very helpful.
I'm hesitant to ask what you usually did.
Oh, I mean, I would always go full confidence, because as soon as I heard that, as soon as I knew
You're
the
supposed
answer,
to say mine because I studied so hard.
No. It's because now I got the strat. Now I got the secret strat.
Okay, let's move on.
But no. So this created like a very small poker like community on campus, and it wasn't big because it's a Catholic university.
And
they
it's engineers.
Right. It's a bunch of engineers, and it's a bunch of college kids. We're all broke. We don't have any money to play with, right?
Good.
But you guys can go check that out. Look up this Dan Kelly guy. I went to school with this kid, and I played poker with him a few times. He's very, very good. He's very good. Now, in the 2010s, moving on past the aughts, we have legal sports betting and huge, big change in the legal landscape of gambling. Mm-hmm. In 1992, let's go back a little bit. We had the Professional and Amateur Sports Protections Act, which basically meant that you couldn't bet on sports in almost every state.
Oh.
So in 1992, sports gambling pretty much goes away, or goes underground, or goes only to like Vegas and Atlantic City and the bookies there.
Okay.
Now, that was just decided in 2018 that it's unconstitutional. A federal ban.
If I want to lose my money, Eric,
You're allowed to.
I should be able to.
Damn it, you can do it. But yeah, the first Trump administration basically decided that was unconstitutional, that the federal government cannot decide whether each individual state can allow sports betting or not. So that is when it goes to the states. And that case is known as Murphy versus the NCAA. Mm-hmm. And it went all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. So that opens up the door for this rapid expansion of sports gambling in the United States. And as of 2025, 35 out of the 50 states in the United States have legalized sports betting.
Wow.
And that's in person and online. Major sports leagues have embraced gambling
Now that
partnerships.
surprises me a little bit too, right?
What?
Because that major league sports have.
That doesn't surprise me at
this
all.
is why it surprises me, because
ahead,
they're
go ahead.
so all over Pete Rose. There have been other people who have gambled. The Black
Famously,
Sox, the
maybe
famous
Michael
Black Sox,
Jordan, people think he gambled.
Phil Mickelson.
Yeah.
There's people who have been famously gambling.
Sure.
And it was
And they get
by their
they get
organizations,
smacked.
whoever their oversight organization. I mean, big problems. And now these guys are like, oh, come on, bring it on.
Well, see, I think it's kind of like doping a little bit in that way, where I think we can reasonably assume that most athletes probably take steroids in one form or another.
I refuse to believe this.
And I think, well, I believe it, Mom.
I don't believe
Mom,
it.
please. Mom, come on. Use your brain a little bit. These guys are so far and above what the average person can do. Like, some of them have to be doping. But it's something that I think the league tends to tolerate to a certain extent. Like, I imagine that people gambling, athletes gambling is probably something that happens more often than you might think. And only when it really, really becomes visible or a problem for one particular athlete does anybody actually get slapped for it.
There was that whole case in one of the Western states where the college team, the refs in basketball were calculatingly miscalling the games. To determine the outcomes, and that came out, and it was not good.
Well, I think anytime it's systematic is when it can potentially become an issue, because there was also the thing with the NBA and like Tim Donahue, the referee in the what was that, like the 2000s, where they were fixing a bunch of games, the refs were fixing a bunch of games. It does. It's just there's money to be made there. That's the thing. I feel like I get it from like the standpoint of a lot of the leagues seem very against their players gambling or their officials gambling or people within organizations gambling. But then they turn around and, I think we talked about it in one of our previous episodes where 9 of the 20 Premier League soccer teams over in England have gambling sponsorships as the front logo on their shirts. And to me, for a while, I've kind of started taking sports a little bit less seriously as far as this is a pure test of people's skill and a pure meritocracy and the best team wins, and more of it's an entertainment business.
Oh, it is.
And they want to entertain you.
Well, you know what? And I mean, I felt that way for a long time regarding like the New York Yankees, where they just buy a team.
Yeah.
And it just, and it happens.
And it just breeds championships.
It breeds championships, which people love, and people love certain rivalries and whatnot. So.
Of course. So anyway, all of these gambling partnerships have now sprung up. And there are people who do gamble within these leagues. There are athletes who do gamble within these leagues. One of these Premier League soccer players, this guy Ivan Toney, very recently was suspended for 8 months for gambling when he plays for a team that has a HollywoodBets.com logo right on the front of the jersey. Like, come on, guys.
Okay,
you got to do better.
He's not a rocket scientist, Eric.
He's not. He's a soccer player. Yeah. So anyway, I just think it's kind of comical. I mean, Brentford, the team he played for, even renewed their deal for the Hollywood Bets logo sponsor. So they don't care about gambling. They don't. They just want to make it seem like their sport is clean so that other people can gamble on it. I think that's the thing. They want us to gamble on it.
Right.
And if we perceive the league as being complicit in some sort of a fixing scandal, then we as the public are going to be like, well, no, I'm not gambling on that if it's fixed. If some organized, crime, syndicate is making these games happen in a certain way, then it's not fair for me. I think that's where their interests lie mostly.
Right. Okay.
So then you have all these sorts of apps start coming out in the late 2010s, early 2020s. You have things like DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM, ESPN Bet. You've got in our own baseball park up here in the north side of the city, the Cubs have built an entire sports book. There's an entire DraftKings sports book built into the stadium. Like it's everywhere, right? And now in the 2020s, you even have people are expanding gambling to new markets. Polymarket is a very, very curious, interesting thing. This business guy, Peter Thiel, I am sure that people have heard of him, operates this website where you can bet on just about anything. And it's operated in a slightly legal gray area because you're betting with cryptocurrency. You're not betting with like American dollars. Right. You're betting with like a Bitcoin or an Ethereum.
What would be an example of something that you could bet on?
In 2024, you could bet on the presidential election of the United States of America. You could bet on if Donald Trump or Kamala Harris was going to win. And it like my research did say that isn't legal yet, but it happened. It definitely happened. I'm going to provide you guys with links. I'm going to show you that happened. There was a betting line saying that Donald Trump was probably going to win. So, it's crazy. And then there are other platforms like Predict It. That operates under the gray area of it's an academic exemption. I'm not exactly sure how that's possible.
So
It's used for like teaching.
Yes,
it's used for like universities teaching purposes. And then like people are actually asking for an increase in being able to bet on politics, which I think is crazy, to be able to bet on something that you can then vote on. like
you can influence it.
Well, we already have some concerns about major voting blocks in certain areas of the United States, like, and I don't want to draw too many eyes, and I don't want to get too much flack from people, so I'm just going to mention this briefly, but the Hasidic Jewish community in New York City is famously known for voting as an entire block group. Whatever their rabbis tell them, they vote that way, and they do not deviate from it. They are lockstep.
Right.
So if you can create more groups like that in the United States that will just vote lockstep with what one person tells them, imagine one person with the ability to control 100,000 votes, and they start betting on what they think is going to happen.
Right.
That's too much power. That's a little dangerous. I'm a bit worried about that. So that's a little bit strange for me. You have more cryptocurrency and Web 3.0 betting. So there are lots of websites that are diving into this poly market idea of you can bet on stuff as long as you're using cryptocurrency to do it.
Let's expand this just for a moment.
Yeah.
The idea that at the recent Coldplay concert, the CEO of the company was seen with this just kills me, with the HR person who clearly should know better.
And I know it kills you because you were HR. That was your profession.
Right. And this person of all people they're together, and the kiss cam comes on.
Oh my God.
And and the guy tries to hide, which is stupid. And the interesting part about that, though, there was immediate betting on whether or not what time frame it would take for this guy to get fired.
Oh my God. And it was fast. It was like 2 days.
Yeah. And
it was quick.
Yeah.
So that's really fun. Yeah. So there's all sorts
So
of
you can bet
silly
on
things
that.
you can gamble
Right.
on. Like, so there's been growth in these kind of decentralized online betting retailers, and that raises a lot of regulatory concerns and issues. There's money laundering potentially happening there. There's consumer protections that are probably not being observed. But that's another discussion for another time. I think.
Right.
We also have the proliferation of micro betting and in-game wagers, which are being driven primarily by these like DraftKings and FanDuel type applications, and it's AI based as well.
And explain what micro betting is.
So that would be like in the middle of a game, something happens where a player, let's say it's a basketball game, and a player is maybe on pace to have a historic night. They're going to score like 60 points or something like that. At halftime, maybe when they have like 35 points, you're given a betting line to say, will they score 60?
Or won't they
score 60? And you can wager not that much on it. You can wager pretty small amounts. But it's these kind of like AI-driven in-game moments that are being more and more pushed to just get you to bet even more.
Right. And here's what I was going to point out, that because the threshold for those, that's like a $5 bet, $10 bet.
It's small.
It's bringing in more people into the gambling arena because the threshold to get in is low.
Yeah, like if you're only going to bet, $5, most people can lose $5, or at least a lot of people can lose $5, right? So it does bring more
That's
people
what I bet
in,
on my euchre game weekly, by the way, $5.
Yeah. So gambling at this point in time, everybody's kind of regulating it at the state level. Each state creates its own framework, has its own taxes, its own gaming initiatives. The federal government,
they don't want any part of it.
They don't really want any part of it. They'll do some enforcement in like very legal situations, maybe like offshore sites and stuff like that.
Right.
But they're really not.
But I would think that...
But most people are like, hey, we need a federal framework for this
Right.
stuff.
I would think that that federal prosecutors would be hot to get after this.
You would think. It's a big industry.
It's a big industry.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, like, you talk about that. Like it's a huge industry,
It is a
right?
huge industry. And that's one of the things that's interesting about it. The casino gambling industry in the U.S. alone generates $329 billion a year in economic activity.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of money.
Dough.
And the American Gaming Association released a study recently, and this goes to your thought about, I think you said in 2018.
Yes.
They pushed this back to the states,
yeah.
right? Okay, so from 2017, the next year, that whole industry was up 26%.
Makes sense.
And that makes sense. And, and it also coincides with COVID, where people have literally nothing to do.
Right. Yeah.
During that time, commercial and tribal casinos support 1.8 million jobs. That's a lot of jobs.
That's a lot of jobs.
Including 700,000 jobs at the casinos themselves.
Okay.
And then those jobs
few.
generate $104 billion in wages. So
wow.
Right? So that's a lot of money.
That's a lot,
also up 40% from 2017.
So gambling is definitely growing.
Right.
Gambling is absolutely growing.
The industry paid, now this is where the government loves, the industry paid $52.7 billion last year in taxes. This is 2022.
Okay, yeah.
And the CEO of the Association for Gambling says that, there is resiliency in these markets and strength. So even when the economy is, a little bit flat, casinos are growing. They're growing.
Yeah,
they keep in there, and then there's actually growth. I mean, he said, think back a few years ago, like 1,000 casinos closed. Well, now those are all, back open again and viable. So despite any troubles in the economy, these casinos are powerful drivers, right? Jane Bokunowitz, the director of Lloyd Levingston Institute at Stockton University in New Jersey, she looks at the Atlantic City gaming industry. And she says that their total contribution in that region is not just wages and benefits, but it's all these additional things that come into play too. Like you go to the casino, you don't eat there, but you go to a restaurant.
That's
you
nearby.
go see a show that's not gambling oriented. You use transportation back and forth. That's part of the whole thing, and that this is really a lot of money.
Well, I think even like one of the places where one of your kids went to college, my sister, Bethlehem, PA, their whole economy is propped up by a huge casino industry right on the river there.
Right. So Bethlehem Steel closed.
Yep.
They took over that facility, and there are buses coming from New York City every 90 minutes to go to those casinos, to that casino. Yeah, it's a big deal. And, that area was depressed, and that's
brought a lot of money.
Keeping it up. That's
a
really good point. So, and they bring in people to do the food and the linens and the, adding on a capital investments and
hotel,
construction,
type of stuff, amenities,
all that.
Services.
Like you were saying, Wrigley Field, they built this whole thing just for gambling. Right?
Yeah. And it's huge. And honestly, it's beautiful. Like, I'm not going to lie. It's crazy inside. But,
the commercial casinos employ almost 332,000 workers.
That is a lot.
And the wages are high. They also, you have to consider there's 265,000 people who are just working at the gambling equipment manufacturers.
Yeah.
So this is basically non-gambling revenue accounted in the U.S. economy of 17% of the economy is non-gambling revenue relative of the casino.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. So it's like the restaurants and the other stuff, the hotels.
So the bottom line is brick and mortar casinos are moneymakers.
They make money.
Right?
They make money.
Right? Modar intelligence reports on sports betting say that the key drivers in this arena are the global market legalization. So it's just not here. It's worldwide.
Also everywhere.
And smartphones, you have such access. You pick up that phone, you have immediate access to any kind of betting that you want. It's real-time data, like you said, where, okay, is the next pitch going to be a strike?
A ball or a strike,
Okay, so it's live betting. There's lots of analytics now available, and there's the introduction of artificial intelligence into this. And so with all of that you have coming into it, it's made this, as you say, it's a huge part of the economy now.
Massive.
But
I mean, like,
talk to me about Illinois. Talk to me
let's
about
talk about Illinois
local.
because it's become a huge part of like the Illinois economy too.
Right.
And when I was a kid, I didn't hear anything about gambling. Like there was no casino in Illinois. You couldn't go gamble places, or except maybe on the riverboat.
Right.
I don't know. At least that's what it felt like. But now you have like so many legal online sports books and over a dozen actual casinos that you can go to in Illinois. So of the legal sports book, you have Bet365, BetMGM, Bet Rivers Sportsbook.
This is all in Illinois.
This is all in Illinois. And I mean, there are other places too, but you can bet on in any of these in Illinois. Caesar Sportsbook, Circus Sports, which I've been seeing. I've been watching a lot of the Tour de France recently.
Right.
And there are commercials with the CEO of that playing all the time. Like this guy's like, hey, Illinois bettors, you want tight money lines? You want big gambling? Come on, Circus Sports got you. So it's like they're advertising for it. You've got DraftKings. ESPN has its own sports book. The ESPN Bet Sportsbook, Fanatics Sportsbook, FanDuel Sportsbook, Hard Rock Bet, like all sorts of things.
Right, everything.
And then the legal retail sportsbooks. There are 13 legal retail sportsbooks in the state of Illinois, and these are actually physical locations in the state of Illinois.
So
okay?
do they have to be licensed by the state of Illinois?
Yes,
okay.
yes, exactly.
So everywhere they go, they have to be licensed by that state.
Yeah. So this is the Bally Bet Sportsbook in the Quad Cities, the Bet Rivers Sportsbook in Des Plaines, Caesar Sportsbook in Elgin, Circus Sportsbook in Waukegan, DraftKings Sportsbook in East St. Louis, DraftKings Sportsbook Lounge at Wrigley Field, Chicago, the one I was talking about, the Fanatics Sportsbook in Stickney, the FanDuel Sportsbook in East Peoria, the FanDuel Sportsbook in Collinsville, the Hard Rock Sportsbook in Rockford, Sportsbook at the Argosy Casino in Alton, the Sportsbook at the Hollywood Casino in Aurora, and the Sportsbook at the Hollywood Casino in Joliet. So these are everywhere now.
This just struck me as just a construct.
Yeah.
A lot of those areas...
A little bit depressed economically, like Rockford, Joliet, Peoria.
Yeah, a little bit economically depressed. That's just, I think you'll talk about that later, but that's an interesting.
Yeah,
that's an interesting.
It is
thought.
interesting to think about.
Yeah.
And now Governor Pritzker is even kind of jumping on this because I think he doesn't seem to be the hugest fan of gambling, or he just wants more money for the state from the gambling operations because he signed a new law into Illinois, sports betting just like 2 months ago. So now there's a 25-cent fee for every bet placed in a sports book in Illinois until 20 million bets have been taken by a specific sports book, a specific bookmaker.
Or by the bookmaker or
by the
activity?
By the bookmaker.
Okay.
So say like Caesars
right.
takes 20 million bets and it's like May. Okay. Now, after that, for the rest of the year, every bet that's placed at that bookmaker has a 50-cent fee attached to it. Now, the bookmakers are smart. They're not paying the fee. They pass on the fee to the customer. Yeah. They just tell the customer, okay, now every single bet you place in Illinois has a 50-cent fee on it.
Okay, but right? I have to applaud Pritzker for trying to raise money because Illinois is not in great shape.
They're estimating that they're going to make around $36 million in tax revenue off of this. So it's something. It's not nothing, but... critics of the fee are pointing out that they're just going to
sports
books are just passing it along to the consumer. Same with like the tariffs and stuff. It all gets passed along to the consumer.
Exactly.
So as far as like the kind of takeaways of this, so we have pretty much gambling moved from prohibition, or it was accepted for a while, then prohibited, then widely accepted once technology and the legislation kind of caught up. All these sports betting and app-based platforms have really dramatically changed the landscape of who is a bettor, who is a gambler,
right?
How easy is it to access betting and gambling?
Easy.
People I know are gamblers that I wouldn't even think before. People that I know have won so much money that some sports books have cut them off and tell them, you can't gamble with us anymore. You're making too much money.
Now, in my own personal experience, I wanted to try this out because I'm not a gambler. And I bet on the Wimbledon.
The Sinner Alcaraz match.
Sinner Alcaraz. And of course, I always go with the show pony, Alcaraz.
Yeah.
By the way, not hard on the eyes.
You like the hot tennis players, Mom. You don't have to lie.
I do. And the bottom line is I lost $50 of my money because
$50, Mom, please.
No,
your granddaughter and grandson's college education. They're down the drain.
That's a lot of money for me, you know.
Yeah.
And I will never do that again.
Yeah.
Now it'll be $5 bets, but I also don't want to get into it so much that now I'm analyzing everything. Let me give you an example in my life. Like years ago, 2 years in a row, I had never done a pool for the NCAA, and I love watching the NCAA.
Right.
So,
I think I remember this.
Right.
Yeah.
So one year I join, and people are like, oh my God, Carol is winning the pool. This is like halfway through, and I'm like, well, that's not going to hold up. And then behold, I win. The next year I enter it.
How much did you win? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't know, $600 or something like that.
Hey, that's
and then
not
the
bad.
next year
That's
I
not bad.
win. Well, then I got so freaked out. Then I started to analyze everything. Like the first year, I'm like, oh, which jersey do I like better?
Yeah.
The second year, I was like, oh, which coach do I like better?
So you got to go with something dumb like that. Next year, go with which animal would win in a fight if
Right.
the two animals
that's a
of the
good one.
teams were going to
So,
fight each other.
The bottom line was that once I started analyzing it too much, it took all the fun out of it. I was wasting too much time doing it. It wasn't free flowing. I started having to follow the teams much earlier in the year, and it just didn't. So I've never
Takes
done
the
any
enjoyment out of it
it
a
took
little
all the
bit.
fun out of it. So
Yeah, that's
anyway,
fair.
that's my whole little story. But
that's pretty much the history, though. Like, do you have anything?
Well,
like,
there are myths around gambling itself.
I do like myths. I do like that. Let's go. What do you got?
Very common misconceptions.
Yeah.
Okay. Some games are rigged. When you go to a casino, some people feel like a game is rigged. And the truth is every reputable operator, and if you go to Vegas, everybody's going to be reputable, right?
Yeah.
They have random number generators, RNGs, and these RNGs are to
with those.
ensure
Yeah.
that the outcomes are independent and unpredictable, right? So some people feel like, that it is rigged, and they pray to the RNGesus, but it's not a thing. It's not a thing. Then there's also the smarty pants guy that comes in and says, well, I'm going to outsmart the house. They count cards, they watch. But these casinos are very sophisticated. They're watching they're honed in on every table, every activity.
Yeah.
They watch what's happening. If they feel that somebody is rigged, that basically you should not do that, because you're more likely to just get kicked out.
Yeah, you're going to get found out. You're going to get kicked out of the casino.
You won't
They're going to be able
outsmart
to tell
it.
that
You
you're
won't
card counting.
Machines, I love this. Machines get hot and cold. So that's to say that, oh, this slot is really hot.
Yeah.
And this one got cold. So
Yeah.
now I'm moving on to a hot one.
I've heard people really, truly, honestly
And
do
like
believe
you
that.
watch somebody win a bunch on a machine and then
Yeah.
they leave and you're like, oh, that's the hot machine.
Yeah.
But there's no truth to that.
Right.
There's no truth to
I
that.
think there was like a Friends episode where Phoebe Buffet fights over like the hot slot machine with like a little old lady who's like 80 years old, right? It's funny.
So you have to get rid of the myths, right?
Right.
And so if you are inclined to gamble at a casino,
Right, yeah.
you should go with the best odds possible for
Ooh.
yourself.
Okay, so are you giving us tips now?
I am giving you
The lady who just lost $50 is going to
right.
give you guys
So
a bunch
I'm
of
not
gambling tips.
right. And but I did win the NCAA pool
You did
2 times
years
in
in
my
a
whole
row.
life.
2 years in a row. That's worth something.
Okay. So games that favor the actual player include blackjack.
Okay.
That playing that game, you have like a 1% chance above the house to win.
Oh, okay. So you got a little edge over that.
I got a little bit of edge. Craps, although it looks complex, offers bets with low edges. So that pass line where you're betting on multiple things happening, that's about 1.4% better than the house.
Okay.
So that looks like super
Interesting.
random to me. Like I don't even like that game.
Yeah.
Poker.
Craps, I think, is a fun game.
Right.
I like that game.
Okay. Now, poker, unlike other games, doesn't pit you against the house. It pits
Right.
you against other people.
Yeah.
So there's other strategies like bluffing and, whatever.
Sure.
Reading the opponent and whatnot. So that can heavily influence any outcome. So that will favor the players more than
Sure. The
anything
house
else.
just takes a little
Right,
bit of the money
right,
from
right.
every pot, I think.
And Baccarat, simple, elegant, friendly. Betting on the banker carries a house edge of about 1%. So even though it's lower, it's not a huge percentage
Okay.
above you.
Yeah.
Now, the games that are tough to beat,
Yeah, the ones you don't want to play.
ones you don't want to play, slots. Okay, and people play slots because they're easy. There's no thinking. You're just doing this. They exceed your 10%. They will beat you like 60% of the time.
So like, yeah, so you only win like 40%
Right.
versus
You're not
they
gonna,
win
you're
like
not gonna,
60%.
They're fun and flashy, but you
Yeah.
won't win.
Yeah.
The big 6-wheel, it's very colorful. The house has
Yeah, I
an
never
edge
liked
of
those.
anywhere from 11 to 24%.
24%.
And
wow.
Keno, the odds are, my mother loved Keno. The odds of winning
I'm not
are
even
low.
sure I know what that
but
is.
the house edge goes up to 25%.
Oh my God.
So-
your mother's just
I mean,
throwing money away.
Yeah. And but I don't. And she was probably one of those women that didn't want anybody to see her lose money.
Sure. Yeah.
And very conservative with
Yeah.
money too. So really, here are the strategies for gambling if you must gamble. Now, we're not going to try to get anybody who's got a gambling issue.
Yeah, if you're an
Right? If
addict,
you're an
don't
addict-
gamble.
Well, no, if you're an addict, go seek help.
Yeah.
Go seek help,
go
right? We
find
recommend
somebody.
that.
Yes.
But if you're somebody who's casual, set a budget and stick to that number. Decide,
Okay.
hey, I'm going to lose $250 tonight. I can afford to do that, and that's it. I can
Okay.
lose $12 tonight, and that's it, and then I'm out.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And so just get out. Learn the rules of the game that you're playing. Like the only game
Yeah,
that
duh.
I'm really confident that I know everything which way to play is 21.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I feel pretty confident with that game, but that's the only one that I feel like I've invested enough, and I don't want to invest a lot of my energy and my life into learning these games,
Right.
especially if I have to lose money in order to win.
Right.
Pick wisely. Choose games like I just said that where the house has the lower edges.
Makes
where
sense.
you can possibly win. Walk away when you're ahead. Now
This is
I
so
think
hard
I have
for
seen
so many people.
I have seen so many people,
Yeah.
brilliant people, wise people, rational people, don't walk away when they should. You got a little money in your pocket?
Well, you're on an
Walk
emotional
away.
high. You're like, hey, I'm going to win forever.
Cash out.
Yeah.
Okay, and take breaks from the gambling table.
That's a good tip. That's a good tip.
Like, okay, you might get exhausted at the 21 table. Take a break, go have a drink, go have some food, come back to something else.
Sure.
Yeah,
I like that. That's good.
So, with the advent of all this stuff, I just say, in the very famous words, you got to know when to hold up. You got to know when to fold up.
All right.
You got to know when to run.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
I'd sing it, but I'd get in trouble for.
Probably. Yeah.
Right.
We don't want to get sued by
Although
anybody.
Kenny
Or we don't want to
Rogers,
get taken
Kenny
down.
Rogers is dead, is he not?
Maybe. I don't know.
Anyway.
Is the song over 50 years old? I think that's
I
what
don't know,
matters.
but I'm over 50 years old, so I should be able to sing it.
So yeah, so that's, we've talked a lot about gambling. We've talked about the history of it. We've talked about kind of stuff that's going on in our state. We've talked about some of the legal aspect of it, some of the, what to do as a responsible gambler. I just want to wax poetic a little bit at the end of this podcast,
Okay,
just on
very
kind
good.
of my personal thoughts on gambling and betting in general. Now, I have done it in the past. Like I said, I did mess around a little bit with those PokerStars online websites.
Right.
And I turned maybe like a small, like maybe I made like $1,000 off of
Okay.
it, right?
That's a lot of money to me, by the way.
I mean, that probably is a lot of money, for a lot of people. But ultimately for me, I think it was, like you say with your NCAA, it was taking up a huge
Right.
amount of time. Like there was one day I remember I played in a tournament online almost all day, maybe like 8 hours. And I think I bought into it for $12 and I maybe made $112 off of it, but that's not a very good payout rate. Is
Well,
it?
and that's not a very good use of your time. You could have
It's
been
not.
out taking that bike ride.
Right, exactly. I could have done a lot more stuff, a lot different stuff. I could have done stuff that gave me some skill or maybe gave me some other benefit, like you
Right.
say, a bike ride, something like that. But I think I'm personally I don't do a lot of gambling nowadays. Like we do the fun little pool for, what's my nephew, when's he going to be born? What's his weight going to be?
And we always play
We play.
we play
what's it called? Pass
left, right, center at Christmas every year.
which is like small gambling, but it's like a couple dollars. I think we've won $20 at most, right,
Yeah.
or something like that. But in general, as a society, I think we are accepting gambling more, and there have been so many increases in access to gambling since the 1940s, and especially so since 2018. With the
Right,
PASPA
right,
repeal,
right.
right? And this is, I don't know if that's been necessarily reflected in programs and assistance that's being offered to people who have their lives significantly impacted by gambling. You know, it's kind of like the idea of when you legalize a drug that hasn't been legal before, you also need to increase the access to addiction services for people who might get addicted to that drug, right? So that you don't just create a whole new class of addicts with no outlet for getting better.
Okay.
So I wonder if the proliferation of gambling is going to create like an entire generation of degenerate gamblers, almost.
Well, I don't know that if it's going to be that severe.
Maybe not degenerate.
But
Let's take that word about it. But like a whole generation of people who are
want to gamble.
way more comfortable with the idea of gambling every day.
The thing that troubles me about all of this, is it probably sounds puritanical to a lot of people, but. Maybe. You know, I don't like the idea. I like hard work and effort.
Yeah, I can understand that.
And, you know, I know you're putting money in, right? And I know that's real. I know that's real.
You could say that people worked hard for that money that they're going to go gamble.
Well, you know, a real gambler, that is their job.
Right.
Right.
True.
And they are the one who is consumed all day long with looking at the odds and looking at, you know.
And the money lines.
The money and the lines.
What's the parlay.
Right. Exactly. But I think if they put that much energy into developing something for the betterment of all of us, we might be better served. Maybe. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. So, you know, sometimes it just makes me sad because I see people who gravitate towards gambling who really shouldn't be gambling. You know, I've got a neighbor next door, and you know, I'm not trying to make too many moralistic judgments about him or too many assumptions about him. But he lives in a small bungalow. His garage out back is held together with duct tape, gum, and a dream. You know, and he goes to the gas station over here very frequently to gamble on these, you know, spin the wheel or like roulette like machines that I'm sure, like just like you say, are really the games you shouldn't be playing,
right?
If you want to actually
they're
make
stacked
money
against you. And
so I mean he's not a wealthy man,
right?
Like I don't think he necessarily has extra money to gamble. You know, now I think that's kind of the type of person that these places almost rely on or prey on and hope that come to their establishments and spend a lot of money gambling, because you kind of fall into this trap of, I'm going to win big and I'm going to get that financial windfall. Eventually, if I keep pulling this lever enough, if I keep pressing this button enough, I will get that payout. And then it makes me feel like the wealth gap kind of continues to widen. The middle class continues to shrink. And I think a lot of people are enjoying gambling. This is my personal view on it. I'm not totally sure about this, but I think a lot of people feel like gambling and winning that money for nothing in a very short period of time is kind of the only way they can actually make enough money
to
get ahead.
Right.
So I think a lot of people are, you know,
in there
working like 2 to 3 jobs just to make ends meet, and they see this as a potential opportunity to kind of escape that rat race. Like if they just win a couple of big bets, they can get that money that gets them out of there.
And you know what? And I'd say 2 things about that. Two concrete examples I can give you.
Sure.
Grandma
Stram, your grandma,
used to,
your mother,
my mother, your grandmother. She worked bingo night at the church, which is hilarious. At the church,
gambling at the church.
Okay, and this was like
people don't see bingo as
this
gambling,
was like the biggest bingo hall in Bridgeport at the time.
Oh wow! So this was a big deal.
It was a big deal.
Yeah,
and people, you know, she was nervous. Well, she worked it, so she would let me. She would, as a worker, she got free cards.
Okay,
so she would let me work the cards while she worked the bingo, and people next to me would have 30 cards in front of them.
Yeah.
I mean, they went from bingo hall to bingo hall to bingo hall. And I'm not sure that they had the means to do as such. That's my first story.
Right.
The second concrete story that I can tell you about is I had a cousin who inherited, she was a only child. She inherited all of her mother's money.
Okay.
Right? And I won't say it was a huge amount of money.
But it was something.
But it was money. It was real money to her.
Okay.
She spent all that money on the boats.
Riverboat
all
gambling.
of it.
Yeah.
All of it. And barely, and is no longer amongst us, but essentially went out of this world
Completely broke.
with nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's a very potentially, gambling can be destructive. Gambling can affect
Right.
people. It can affect not just the people that involve themselves in gambling, but also the people that are their family,
Right,
or
peripheral.
friends or people that know them.
Yeah.
And the other thing about it to me is that in all honesty, people shouldn't be able to win a huge amount of money from any given sports book or any given casino, because those casinos eventually cut those people off. They don't continue having the patrons
If you're beating
come
the
around.
house.
If you're beating the house consistently, they'll cut you off. You're done at this establishment. And that's a completely legal thing to do, which also makes it crazy for me to think that our president managed to bankrupt like 4 casinos in his time. How do you even do that if you're allowed to just kick people out who are bankrupting you?
I don't know. Anyway,
so
look-
but my thought is the entire industry kind of preys upon people who either mistakenly believe they're going to become rich through gambling, or just don't have the impulse control to stop themselves.
To stop.
And if a casino or a sports book is being operated in the correct way, it's going to be operated profitably. It can't fail.
Right.
So, and they cut off individuals that threaten the business model if they
Right.
need to. So the casino business
Well, you
should,
see
in
the-
theory, always make money.
You see the numbers. They are
make
making
money.
money.
Right.
And we're talking about, or Eric's highlighting right now, people who don't have great means and don't have that impulse control and so forth on, and about the wealth gap. However, let's think about this in the future. There are wealthy people that gamble in different ways.
There are.
And we
There
will
are.
be
Yes.
will be talking about that
Yes,
in
we
the
will.
future
Yes,
as
we will.
well.
So that will most likely be the topic of next podcast. For now, I think we have concluded our discussion on gambling.
Yes.
So thank you, everybody, for joining us this month. We will see you next time. And remember, mind the generation gap and keep that conversation civil. Good night, everybody.
Okay, thanks.